everyone, and welcome to Mama4Papas Podcast business presentation. Mama4Papas Podcast is a weekly audio show targeting stay-at-home dads in English-speaking countries. The podcast has one straightforward mission: to normalize parenthood to house husbands. The magic word here is multitasking. By nature, women are mentally and physically capable of doing several things at once. On the other hand, men cannot, and it's okay. Mama4Papas will also help you value human relations, improve the connection with your children, and cook fast and healthy meals while the kids sleep. Always with a twist. This podcast is an authentic, hilarious, and frequently weird for those who happen to be parents during these crazy times we all live in. My initial market analysis was based on research from the United Kingdom. It is by far the country with more available data when it comes to full-time dads, pre- and post-COVID-19. The pandemic created a new norm, and parents see themselves working from home or with no work at all, taking care of the household and children. The new norm made men the primary caregiver. My market research, the first one, focused on the significant English-speaking countries: USA, UK, Canada, Australia, and Ireland. 100 dads from the above countries with an age group of 25 to 45 years old answered a short survey with the following questions. Are you a stay-at-home dad? Do you listen to podcasts? Would you subscribe to a podcast about parenthood for dads? As you can see, the results were quite astonishing. 60% of the respondents are stay-at-home dads. 82% are podcast listeners, 71 do admit to subscribe to a parenting podcast for dads, and 71 out of those 100 men are consumers of parenting podcasts. My podcast demography is rising and eager to be acknowledged. The financial pressure of any household in COVID-19 gave a face to my future listeners. Women are carving their way in the workplace, and men are taking care of the family. Roles are inverted, and the tendency is to grow. From my podcast surveys using pollfish.com real-time results, 80% of my targeted audience is based in the UK and USA. To make sure I was having the right target, I did a second survey using, again, pollfish.com, where I focused uniquely on the USA dads, as they were the most active ones. Again, the same demography was used. I updated the questions to be more specific to the podcast. The first one was, are you a stay-at-home dad? The second one, are you a podcast listener? On the third one, I asked, would you subscribe a podcast about parenting where the host is a mom? And the fourth one, I asked if it was a problem that the podcast was not based in their country. As you can see from the results, 51% are stay-at-home dads, 72 admit to subscribing to parenting podcasts for dads where the host is a female, 82% are podcast listeners, and 76 do not consider a barrier if the podcast is not based in their country. Also important to say that the survey was made to a sample of 250 American men aged between 25 and 45. Here I can show you the statistics according to a study done in 2020 by Infinity Dial 20, where 75% of the US population is familiar with the term podcasting, where 50% of all US homes are podcast fans, and where 51% of the podcast listeners are male, same as the US population. The curious one is that 57% of baby food households are podcast listeners. So from the marketing point of view, the goal is to establish Mama4Papas Podcast as the podcast to listen and interact when it comes to dads and their doubts related to parenthood and personal relations. And how will I get this? First of all, identifying and targeting my audience, creating amazing content, create a website for the podcast to allocate all the shows with online streaming, to allocate also the podcast through as many platforms as possible, to have remarkable guests, to get invited to other people's podcasts, to create ads on existing similar podcasts, creating interaction with my listeners with a call to action button if needed, to sell merchandising, and of course, networking. And the strategy goes on. Social media is also very important. We'll be posting on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as repeatedly as possible. Instagram will aid in consolidating the brand image by linking and engaging with the community. Email marketing, creating a database with the targeted audience email and send them monthly newsletters promoting the new episodes, publicizing partnerships, creating interest, and promoting the podcast in online communities that share the same content. We will use Google. We will use the SEO and Google AdWords to reach our targeted audience via Google search. And of course, we will mention other similar podcasts, businesses, and entrepreneurs in order to get a shout out from them in their own podcasts. When it comes to my SWOT analysis and research, the result is quite simple. There's a niche here. The she for he movement does not exist. The top 10 podcasts about parenthood are done from dads for dads. A female host talking to men is new. The strengths of the Mama4Papas podcast is that it's for a group of modern dads currently at home taking care of the kids with no idea how to do it, with a female host leading the podcast. The weaknesses can be the wide audience. The USA is a very big country with various cultures. It won't be easy to please everyone. The opportunities can be seen as the creation of a movement, the she for he movement. Mama4Papas is the first podcast aimed at men with a female host. And finally, the threats can be the target audience, as the podcast is not based where the audience is. Therefore, to find a common interest with the audience, to keep them interested, can be an issue. Hi everyone, and hello papas. I'm so honored to start this. So yes, this is the first ever podcast of a mom talking to you dads. My name is Tania. I'm a 38-year-old Portuguese mommy based in Dubai. And no, I promise I won't be one of those nagging moms no one wants to listen to. Sorry moms. I also won't be teaching you nothing new, but I promise that I'll guide you on doing it better in this thing called parenthood. You're doing great anyway. Kids are still alive, so keep up the good work. I'll just grab myself a glass of wine and introduce you to my first guest, Mr. John Doe. John is a stay-at-home dad here in Dubai and also my first victim. Later in the show, I'll have a Michelin star chef, Papa, who's going to help us cook fast and healthy while the kids are sleeping. Stay tuned. Mwah. The financial side of the project, it's not very ambitious, therefore feasible if it's a one-woman show. As you can see in the financial projection slide, the initial costs on year 0, the expenses include the website creation design and its maintenance, the podcast studio rental, plus editing of the shows, promotions on Instagram, direct advertising on similar shows' websites, magazines, and on websites related to the topic of parenthood. Marketing costs for primary and secondary data we might need. I also included one employee salary and visa costs and accounting to ensure all the cash flow is being controlled. Other administrative will consist of all related to travels, communications, meals, PR, etc. As for the revenues on year 0, I'm not expecting a significant expression, therefore I was very conservative with the numbers. Year 0 serves to give it all when it comes to promoting the show. Mama4Papas' primary sources of revenue will be through donations, PayPal or Patreon, subscriptions, sponsorships, affiliate sales. Regarding the balance sheet, I started with a capital stock of 25,000 dirhams and a long-term debt of 50,000 dirhams. This 75,000 dirhams will help me to start the business. In the first 2 years of the podcast, the company will have negative equity. Still, it will begin to distribute dividends at the end of the 4th year. As indicated by ongoing information, there are around 850,000 complete and active podcasts accessible across different channels and stages. This information, contrasting with the 31 million channels on YouTube, positions podcasting as an amazing promoting channel for any business. Besides, webcast audience members are supposedly more taught and more well off, with almost 50% of all complete web recording audience members being school graduates wage and gaining a total compensation of $250,000 yearly. This means that there's a market that can appreciate and spot my niche expertise while also having higher tendency to spend on my podcast services and products.